Okay, committee, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. First and foremost, Dennis has canceled the meeting for tomorrow. We had a conversation. He was worried about his safety. And so we will reschedule tomorrow's hearing for Monday. That way everybody can remain safe tomorrow. First item on the agenda is a hearing on SB 493, and we'll get a brief description from the reviser to start with.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 493 preempts cities, counties, or unified government, which is termed municipalities in the bill, from regulating paper, plastic, and other containers used by businesses. Specifically, the bill would prevent such municipalities from adopting or enforcing an ordinance, resolution, or regulation that restricts, taxes, prohibits, or otherwise regulates the use, disposition, or sale of auxiliary containers. Auxiliary containers are defined broadly in the bill without limitation as a bag, cup, package, container, bottle, device, or other packaging that may be made of cloth, paper, plastic, foam plastic, expanded plastic, cardboard, corrugated material, aluminum, glass, post-consumer recycled material, or similar coated or laminated material. And it is designed for the consumption, transportation, or protection of merchandise, food, or beverages at a manufacturing, distribution, or processing facility, or a food service or retail establishment. Retail establishment is also defined in the bill, again, broadly as any retail establishment, including a grocery, drug, or liquor stores, dry cleaners, hardware stores, and so on. The bill exempts certain activities of a city, county, or unified government from preemption. A municipality may operate a recycling, composting, or solid waste disposal program and regulate the use of auxiliary containers on property owned or maintained by the municipality. The bill also provides that it is not to be construed to prohibit or restrict a municipality from the passage or enforcement of a general state or general local sales and use tax, restricting the use of glass containers based on public safety concerns, prohibiting littering, or setting reasonable standards for the regulation of alcohol possession as otherwise provided by law. If passed, the bill would become effective July 1st, 2022. This bill passed the Senate on a 27-13 vote. It was originally requested by Senator Olson, introduced in the Fed and State Committee on the Senate side, and before being assigned to the Senate Commerce Committee. That's what the bill does.
Any questions for the reviser? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have three questions. First, the first section number, or A, it says auxiliary container means without limitation. The question on limitation, that means that a straw would also be in that list?
So I think the terms without limitation are sort of to avoid any construction by a court that listing out all these containers is going to somehow mean that's all there is. So it's sort of like including but not limited to.
Okay, so a straw, as long as it fit the definition of I'm going to look at it, just delivering food or beverage, that would probably be an item?
I would say that because, if you read the bill as a whole, it's sort of aimed at containers, right? So bottle, device, other packaging, package, bag, cup. And so straw does not fit neatly within, that definition. So I think if one wanted, it could be, one can make an argument that it's similar to these kind of things. But if one wanted to be clear that a straw would be included in this, I think probably one would want to do that.
Okay, so transportation is not transporting to your mouth. The next question is, in terms of the establishments where this can occur, would a county fair or a city festival be included in this, or would they be able to, that would be separate and not covered by this bill?
So I'm not quite sure what you mean. You mean would regulations at such an event be restricted?
Well, so it says that this would apply at food service establishment, means establishment that prepares or serves food for sale to the public, and then it has a retail establishment definition as well. And I'm just wondering if cities or counties, probably cities, could actually require at their festival or county fair, this might not be applicable to them in those situations.
Well, one of the provisions in the bill is that it does allow the regulation or use of regulation of auxiliary containers on property owned or maintained by the municipality. So, let's say that the fairgrounds are not owned or maintained by the municipality, then I think the restrictions would apply.
Okay, and then the last question, would you tell us the differences between, or the substantial differences between the bill that was introduced and heard in 2019?
I'd have to.
Is that something that you could prepare for and send?
Yeah, I can look that up and send
Okay.
it. Sure.
Thank you,
Okay
Mr. Chair.
Okay. Representative Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chuck, just as a follow-up to the representative's prior question, the first question, as I'm reading here under those definitions, we're talking about with auxiliary containers. So we're talking about a device that's designed for the consumption of food. So we are going to cover straws and forks and knives and spoons, all of them. True?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep. Very good point, Representative. So if you want to look at, I think the intent of the bill is to define the terms broadly. So, device for the consumption, as you point out, of food or beverages, that probably would include a straw. So thank you.
That's not even broadly considered. That's specifically what that's describing in there. So just to make sure that we're clear. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Thank you, Charles. I'm going to go ahead and open the proponent in-person testimony. And what we're going to do, we're limited today on time because of the tardiness of the start. We're going to try to keep everybody to 3 minutes. We have your written testimony, and so there's no need to really read it, but just kind of hit the highlights if you could, and recognize that this is our second go on this bill in a 2-year period, or 3-year period. With that, the first person is Jason Watkins, but I believe he's being moved to written testimony only. And so we'll skip over him and we'll go with Kent Eccles with the Kansas Chamber. Welcome to committee. Thank you for being here.
There we go. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Kent Eccles on behalf of the Kansas Chamber. Thanks for the opportunity to be here, and I'll be brief. I know you got a lot of conferees and short on time, and thank you, Representative Ralph. I couldn't have said that better. That's exactly what the intent of that language is, so thanks for clarifying that. Simply put, this bill provides statewide uniformity with regard to plastic containers, as the reviser did an excellent job of explaining. So why do we need this bill? You've probably heard that Wichita, Lawrence, and some other municipalities are considering regulating or outright banning these types of products. Kansas has 105 counties. We've got 627 municipalities, and the business community doesn't feel that we need a hodgepodge of regulations from one county or city to the next. You'll hear from another conferee later about some examples in other states where they have 160 different regulations in the state, and we don't think that's good for the business community or the consumer. It only hurts small business, consumers, and the supply chain. There's the example where you have one retailer who has businesses in multiple municipalities or counties, and now they're going to have to ship different products from that supply chain to different counties, and that causes them issues. You'll probably hear from opponents about home rule. and we understand the importance of home rule. But there are times in the state where it makes sense to have statewide uniformity, and this is one of them. We believe we do it for firearms, we do it for labor laws, we do it for oil and gas regulations, we do it for taxes. So it's not without precedent. On the consumer point that I made earlier, paper is certainly more expensive than plastic. It costs 8 cents per paper bag at a store. Who's going to bear that cost? It's going to be the consumer. And then, the free market aspect of this bill is very important to us. Consumers right now can choose where they shop. They can choose to bring their own bags with them, and many do. And we believe retailers should also be able to choose what container they use, or if they offer different kinds. If they want to do paper, fine. I mean, when I live in Johnson County, and many of the retailers there offer the option: do you want paper or plastic, or did you bring your own bag? And we think that's the way to go. I've also attached, it's on the back of my testimony, it's called Uniformity Across America. It looks like this. I don't know if you have it pulled up, but you can see our surrounding states where they have uniform regs on this, and those are in the red. The green ones are the ones that are actively discussing it. So I'll stop there. I'll be brief. I don't want to run out of time. I'll take questions now, or when you get through all the proponents.
Yeah, we'll hold questions until all the proponents have gone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next up, we've got Scott Schneider with the Kansas Restaurant and Hospitality Association. Welcome back to committee, sir. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Scott Schneider with the Kansas Restaurant and Hospitality Association. I want to talk about 2 points quickly. One is the general disruption in the industry, restaurant and hospitality industry. In my testimony, I talk about employment, but I also put a chart in there that talks about a survey that's recently been conducted on the disruption on the purchasing food or being able to service products. What I couldn't find is one specific chart about our goods that we need to deliver our food. But I do have an example that I was buying pizza the other day at a Andover pizza place, Bob and Luigi's, a wonderful little place, and got home, didn't think much about it. On the box was a note: thank you for the other pizzerias for sharing their containers. Nola's Pizza and AJ's Pizza, they were literally having to get their pizza containers from other places because the supply chain is so disrupted right now that they couldn't acquire pizza boxes. So I think that's happening more and more, whether it's cups or plastics. I think that's a real life story that's here in Kansas today. The second piece I want to talk about is home rule. Home rule is a meaningful tool for cities. It was passed in 1961. A dear friend of mine, Jack Glaves, was the local government chair back in the late 50s, and I was talking about home rule once, and he goes, "Scott, you don't understand what home rule even is." Our committee was so busy because cities didn't have the authority to unilaterally change their ordinances. They had to come basically before my committee in the House asking for a bill to move a street or to make a move. And he goes, "It was horrible. We had to pass this because the cities just couldn't function." The tool that we received or retained for the state was uniformity. This bill is the appropriate way to say we want a statewide policy while still giving cities the authority to manage things that they need to manage. So we support this bill. We think it's the right approach, and we'll answer questions whenever the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Zachary Taylor, Director of American Recycle Plastic Bag Alliance. Thanks for coming to town, sir. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. Happy to be here today. Happy to be here in support of Senate Bill 493. 23 other states across the country have some type of statewide uniformity for auxiliary containers. Why is that important? Because a patchwork of local ordinances is a disaster for consumers and small businesses, particularly right now, as they are facing supply chain disruptions and rampant inflation. Let's talk about Massachusetts. 149 different local bag rules across the state. In Middlesex County, the most populous county in the state, 39 different bag ordinances, 9 different standards for businesses to try to keep up with. This absolutely eviscerates their ability to take advantage of economies of scale. And there are circumstances where a gas station on one side of the street and a gas station on the other side of the street may not be able to offer similar products. Imagine if that was a restaurant where you're able to do to-go orders in one type of product, but your competitor on the other side of the street can do it in a different kind that is far less expensive. We hear a lot about this is important to address litter, waste, marine debris when it comes to plastic bags. The data doesn't bear that out. Data from the Environmental Protection Agency shows that 0.3% of municipal solid waste is accounted for all plastic bags and sacks together. Plastic carryout bags that are often targeted by these local ordinances make up a smaller fraction of that number. Less than 1% of litter. Litter survey after litter survey finds that plastic bags account for less than 1% of litter items picked up, including in the Keep America Beautiful survey that was conducted last year that found 0.6% of items collected roadways and waterways account for plastic bags. It's not to say that littering is okay. The industry is strongly opposed to it and believes all bags should either be disposed of properly or recycled. 77% of bags get reused for home use, things like picking up after your pet or lining your waste paper bin. Another 13% get recycled. We'd like to see more recycling, and we're happy to work with the state of Kansas to promote that. But all told, about 9 in 10 bags get reused or recycled, so it's simply not the issue that we hear so frequently about. Back to uniformity, though. It's about level playing field for businesses of all shapes and sizes across the state. It's about making sure they can access economies of scale, which are particularly important as prices go up and up and up. And it's freedom of commerce for businesses and consumers. I'm happy to take any questions, happy to answer questions about how this is going in other states, but I appreciate the time today and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Lastly, on the in-person proponents, we have John Monroe for the Kansas Beverage Association. Thanks for coming in, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is John Monroe. I'm the Government Affairs Consultant for the Kansas Beverage Association. Our industry is in support of SB 493. You've heard this before. There's 2 really big main points that we are in support of this. One is disruption to industry. And so you heard about the restaurants, you heard about the various businesses going across state lines, going across from county to county. And that's the same for our industry. We have our products that we have across the entire state, having it streamlined, having it the same way across all county lines makes it easier for our industry to operate. And the other part is, as a beverage industry, we make our own products are 100% recyclable. So that was a determination done as a business to make that our products recyclable. So we don't think it's single use. We're able to recycle that product and make it into other items. And those are our 2 main points for supporting this bill, and happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all we have for proponents. Is there any questions? Oh, is there one more? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Becky Schwartz. I think I'm listed as an opponent. My members would not be happy if I did that.
Okay. Do we have her testimony? Okay. Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Like I said, I think I'm listed as an opponent, but I'm with Fuel True, Independent Energy, and Convenience. We represent the convenience stores across the state, and I will be very quick. One of the reasons that you've heard already is about consistency across the state. Our convenience stores learned this during COVID because every city and county and municipality had different rules that they had to follow. And ironically, some of it had to do with using your own cup. So we really, they have so many different rules that they have to follow that this is just one less thing to make it, that would make things less complicated for them. We have so many of these products at our stores. If you think about the stuff that's on the rollers, that's in a paper, or the coffee cups, or your soda cup, there's a ton of these products in our stores. Most of our members buy these products in bulk, so they have pallets of it sitting in their back rooms or in their headquarters. And I think Kent touched a little bit on the shipping from store to store. So if one place doesn't allow it, they're going to have to figure out how to get it to another store. The last part of this that we want to make sure we service the transient community. When you're traveling across the state, truck drivers, the traveling families, you don't always think about having to have an extra cup or something to carry your stuff from the convenience store out into your car. So those are some of the things that we really want to make sure that we can still use. We want our stores to be able to make those decisions on their own as opposed to being forced to abide by some of these things. So we urge you to support 493 just to help our businesses have one less thing that they have to follow. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now that should be, is there anyone else here to testify as a proponent? I'm not seeing any. Committee, are there any questions for any of the proponents? Representative Highland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for Zachary Taylor. Thank you for coming. Can you tell me what the status is of the recycling of plastic? And today we're talking about bags primarily. You read all kinds of things that China quit taking the plastic. Where do we stand?
Thank you very much for the question. So plastic bags are recycled a little bit differently from other products. The industry pioneered the store take back program with our partners in the retail sector. So consumers have the option to bring back their plastic bags, air pills from e-commerce orders, other stretchy films and wraps back to the store. Those products are collected and batched up with other plastic films that come in through the back of the grocery store. Think about the pallets of food arrives on. And then companies like ours and other manufacturers purchase those plastics from the retailers and turn into new products like bags, railroad ties, playground equipment. There's increasingly innovation around using those products as asphalt binder. All told, this helps decrease the reliance on virgin resin and promotes a more circular economy. I'll also note we do hear a lot about changes in China's policy that relates to plastic. Recent research on recycling of plastic bags and films in the U.S. shows that more than 77% of what's recycled in the U.S. is processed by U.S. and Canadian processors, turned back into pellets that our companies buy, and like I said, make it into new bags, and other companies make other things with it. But
thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Dodson.
Yeah, Zachary, maybe you just stay up there for a minute. When you're talking about recyclable, which we see on the side of all packaging, that doesn't mean it's going to be recycled. All the percentage of consumers who do not bring their bag back, but rather put them in their garbage, and then it shows up in my landfill in Manhattan, Kansas, is pretty darn high. And we've got a problem of drifting bags out in the ocean. So who is the proponent for pushing people who manufacture the goods and package them to reduce the amount of packaging that surrounds a product, and then to make the product packaging more recyclable, and not just recyclable, getting it to be recycled?
thank you very much for the question. So I think there's two parts there. So first, I'll talk a little bit about bags and why so many do end up in the landfill. That's because they're reused at home. A study from Recycle Quebec, the recycling authority in the Canadian province of Quebec, found that up to 77% of bags get reused at home, whether it's picking up after your pet, collecting litter from your cat, lining a waste paper bin in your bathroom or home office. Now I've been working from home for 2 years. And so people use those, and that eliminates the need for an alternative plastic product that may have more virgin resin in it, that may be more environmentally intensive because it's thicker. And so that's a great option for consumers who want to decrease the number of products they buy, so reuse the plastic bags they bring home. I know I do at my house. In terms of promoting more recycled content, I can speak for the industry itself. We have a sustainability commitment, and that's to increase the amount of recycled product in the bags that are manufactured throughout the country. Year over year, we just met our first benchmark and exceeded it, actually, so we're well on the way to that. We also are investing with our partners to make sure that people know how to recycle bags. We have partnered with a company called Stina to launch a new film drop-off directory, so consumers can go online to www.bagandfilmrecycling.org, put in their zip code, and they'll be directed to their closest store take-back program so they can bring the bags back to the store and recycle them that way. Hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thanks. I have one more question, maybe for the chamber.
Ken?
Yes, sir.
So as I understand it, we're talking about not having one person on one side of the street decide one way and one person on the other. This is about municipalities.
Right.
Because right now, a grocer, let's say Dillon's or Hy-Vee, can decide what kind of product they want in their store already, right?
Right.
So I'm trying to search for the practical impact. If the city of Manhattan, for example, decides that they don't want any more plastic bags. So what does that mean in the term of let's say the wholesaler who's trying to deliver a product to Wichita, Lawrence, Topeka, Manhattan?
Well, I think our point was that, the wholesaler has to ship different products or different packaging to different municipalities. And my point is, I live in Johnson County where there's several municipalities and a street divides them, there's a state line, from Leawood to Kansas City, Missouri, where you can have them on different sides of the street, literally having different rules. And our point is that that's a supply chain issue for the people that ship those products.
And just to follow up, I mean, it is a supply chain issue, but it's also a negotiation between the city and whoever the wholesaler is. The wholesaler says, I don't want to supply you anymore. The municipality says, oops, I might have made a mistake. Or I don't care, I'm going to get somebody else.
Yeah.
So this is all part of the free market.
Solve that problem. So.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Representative Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this probably is just going to be for somebody from the proponents. So whoever, when I get done rambling on here, whoever wants to step up can have this. But my day job is city attorney at Dodge City. And so when I'm sitting down with the city commissioners there, I'm pretty much a proponent of home rule. And that's my default spot all the time, because I try not to tell them that my voters are any better than their voters about issues that may go on right there in their backyard. But I guess at this point, I'm curious, is this legislation proposed in some anticipatory fashion, or have you not been getting good responses from counties and cities when you approach them about the fact that they put limitations in place?
Thank you for the question, Representative. I guess what I would say is we've seen some cities in the past talk about regulating bags. And for one example, the issue with that, of course, it disrupts, it creates patchwork, right? Like we talked about in Massachusetts, where there's 149 different local rules about what bags are allowed. It makes it very difficult for businesses to operate, very confusing. I'd also note that there are several states that have laws on the books regarding what kind of bags are allowed statewide. All of those laws also preempt localities from having their own standards, with the exception of Colorado.
If I might, Mr. Chair, take this the way it's intended. I'm not interested in Massachusetts, and I'm not interested in any place else. I'm wondering right now in this state, is this bill anticipatory, or do we have a problem here right now?
I know the city of Wichita is looking at banning plastic bags.
But they don't right now.
They are considering an ordinance, as they are working on, is my understanding.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
They don't right now, and neither does Lawrence, but I think they're both thinking about it. Representative Clayton and then Shu.
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Taylor, please. Thank you. So one of the things that you spoke to was about the reusability of plastic bags. And certainly I think that all of us are very fiscally conservative here in Kansas, and we tend to do that. But one of the things that I have noticed as a consumer of these types of products is that the quality of plastic bags has degraded significantly. So it used to be that I could carry glass containers and things like that in there for carrying my lunch to work. Now I have to double bag. So it doesn't last as well as it used to. And can you speak to, as an industry expert, can you speak to why the quality of those things are degrading? Because I do think that they used to be reusable, but now they have gotten thinner. And I do think that it really is more of a use once and then it becomes trash, because I can't have my Walmart bag split on me and have my stuff fall everywhere. So talk to me a little bit more about that.
Thank you very much for the question, Ranking Member. I guess what I would say is that, bags are, of course, what they are. The bags are plastic bags, are an option for consumers to reuse at home if they want to. They can also take them back to the store and recycle them. we work with our industry partners to meet the needs for what they're looking for. And that includes increasing the amount of recycled content. Sometimes in the recycled content process, you can get impurities that can weaken the integrity of a plastic carryout bag if it's bags are made of polyethylene. But if they have something like polypropylene in them, that can cause a weak spot that can cause it to tear. And so it's about making sure that the recycled content that we're able to get is as clean as possible. Notably, there's a study on New York's bag ban, which bans plastic bags, but they still require retailers to accept plastic film. After that ban was passed, the supply chain for recycled content of plastic films actually got worse. The amount of contamination in that stream doubled.
And just a quick follow-up. You've mentioned numerous times that those sorts of things can be taken back to the store and recycled, but I don't mean to denigrate my local grocery stores, but this really hasn't been an option for the stores in my area. It used to be, but really no longer is. It would be helpful if you have access to this information, if you could get to our committee just a list of the local grocery stores here in Kansas or establishments that do offer in-store recycling. Because I know we have curbside in my neighborhood, but also it is up for debate whether those things, if there's any type of mixing or contamination, we used to have to separate our recycling. Now we just all put it into one bin. And so it remains to be seen if these things are actually even getting recycled. And so anything that you can provide us to increase our trust in this process, I think would be particularly helpful and welcome. Thank you.
Of course, happy to provide that to the committee.
Representative Shu, last question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. More just a comment, not a question. The example of Massachusetts was used as kind of a patchwork and then leading to businesses struggling or whatever. I just looked it up. The per capita GDP of Massachusetts is like 30,000 higher than Kansas. So maybe there's something that we could learn there. I don't see much evidence that it's impacting businesses there. Thank you.
Okay, that'll do it for the proponents. And we're going to move to the opponents in person. Zach Pastora with the Sierra Club. Thanks for coming in today.
You bet. Thank you, Chairman Zach Pastora, proud lobbyist for the Kansas Sierra Club. We have nearly 5,000 members across the state dedicated to enjoying, exploring, and protecting the great outdoors of Kansas. It's hard to know what comments I can fit into a 3-minute window here. I appreciate any additional time I might be granted. There's a number of items I could talk about. Could talk about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. One of 5 gyres in our oceans right now. That Great Pacific Garbage Patch, 8 times bigger than the land area of Kansas. I could talk about the 1 to 2 million tons of plastics that flow from our rivers into our oceans, and how these plastics may be used minutes and other auxiliary containers minutes, but don't decompose for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But I think Senate Bill 493 is ultimately about democracy and the ability for local communities to do things they feel are right to improve their community and improve the state of Kansas. I mean, think about what we're talking about. We're talking about limiting the power of cities to pursue ways to limit plastic pollution at the source, either through a ban on certain products or taxes. And they've been thinking about these issues for years. We don't have any ordinances on the books right now, so it's hard for me to really swallow the idea that there would be a hodgepodge. Kansas is not Massachusetts, and I'd be surprised we even get a dozen cities in Kansas that want to move forward with any limits on plastic products. But if so, then we should, if that argument on a uniform law is compelling to you, then let's balance it out for good public policy with something that actually does something about the problem. Okay? No one on the proponent side acknowledged that we have a plastic problem in Kansas. I saw it on the way here. I lost count after first 4 miles of containers and packaging that I saw on our roadside. Didn't even get into our drainage ditches. You look out in the field and what do you see? Corn stubble holding plastic bags in our trees. Okay, many of you have been in Kansas longer than I have. So just think about what we can actually do to balance the public interest, not make it a self-serving bill, single-use bill, if you will, and just protect businesses for the pollution they're creating. All right, let's do something for the state of Kansas. There's a lot of smart people in the room. Let's balance it out, maybe with an incentive for businesses to get a tax break if they eliminate the plastics or reduce the plastics they're producing out there a lot of times for free for their customers. Let's think about maybe a sin tax on some of these plastic products. The list could go on. Just a couple more minutes, Chairman.
You'll have an opportunity to speak more when people ask you questions.
Thank you. Okay.
Next up, Rabbi, is it Modi Reimer, Interfaith Action.
Thank
Sir,
you.
before you start, I had an interaction with you a few weeks ago on Twitter, and I wanted to apologize for my harsh words. I didn't know who you were. I just saw your tweet, and it rubbed my competitive spirit a little bit. And I made some remarks that I probably shouldn't have. I did not know that you were a rabbi, didn't know what your name was, but I had a bad reaction, and I want to apologize for that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
I forgot.
There's some people who are going to be looking at our timelines later, Mr. Chairman.
All right, you can go ahead. Your 3 minutes has not started yet. So
thank you.
Yeah, you had a minute left.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Clayton, members of the committee, I'm Rabbi Moti Reaper. I'm the Executive Director of Kansas Interfaith Action. We're a statewide faith-based advocacy organization that works on a variety of racial, economic, and climate justice issues. And of course, I'm here standing in opposition to SB 493. We represent a number of the major denominations in the area, so I'm also standing as a representative of Lutherans Restoring Creation. The denominations and the faith communities that make up Kansas Interfaith Action take as one of their very core principles the care of God's creation. So stewardship, creation care is a very core principle to the people who make up our organization. Our opposition to this bill is based on 3 points. One is that there is a policy reason to restrict single-use plastics. They do cause pollution. There are costs involved with it, and also I'm here to say that the production of single-use plastics puts as much greenhouse gases into the atmosphere as 57 average 500 megawatt coal-fired power plants. As coal becomes less of an issue and the petrochemical industry relies more on generating plastics for the use of natural gas, fracked natural gas, by 2030, the plastics industry contribution to climate change will outstrip that of the coal industry. So there is a reason to address this issue. Secondly is home rule. Other people will talk about that. I've never found home rule to be a particularly compelling argument for people in this legislature, so I'll move on. The third part is something that Zach said that I want to draw a little bit of more of a line under. So there is no possibility, no potential in this legislature for having a conversation about environmental or climate issues. It's never talked about. I come to the Commerce Committee once every couple of years to say the word climate, right? We talk about it only in Utilities Committee, and we talk only in Utilities and Ag, and we never say the word climate in those either, or environmental issues. There's no way to have environmental policy in the current legislature in Kansas. So when a municipality, when individuals or communities come together to do the hard work of convincing their municipality to do something about the unquestionably difficult and a good policy about restricting single-use plastics, right? They do the hard work of getting something passed, and then so the industry runs to the legislature and gets you to preempt it, right? It's anti-democratic. People are doing things because it's important, and there's no other way to do it. There's no other way. There's no other way to have that conversation. So I want to say that for the policy reasons, for the home rule reasons, and for the democracy reasons, we do need policy on this issue, as my friend and colleague Zach said, but it's not this one. Please vote no on SB 493. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Brandy Johnson is up next, and committee, I'm going to have to step out here for the rest of the meeting, so Representative Long is going to take over for me. Thanks.
Okay, Brandy Johnson is our next opponent. Is Brandy here? Brandy is not here. Okay, moving on. Sarah Chenoweth, League of Kansas Municipalities. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. My name is Sarah Chenoweth. I'm an intern for the League of Kansas Municipalities. This is my first time delivering testimony, so thank you all for allowing me to be here. I'm very excited and nervous. Okay, so I have been fortunate enough in my life so far to have been able to travel a lot, both internationally and within the United States. While I absolutely love traveling and meeting all kinds of different people, there's one thing I can't stand, and maybe some of you can identify with this. I hate it when I tell people I'm from Kansas and they say something like, isn't Kansas just flat and boring? No, these people have clearly never been to Kansas. As we all know, we are very diverse. And I hate it when people just assume that we're all the same when they haven't been here. We do all have similar values. We are as diverse as our beautiful landscapes. We want to keep those landscapes beautiful. And 61 years ago, we came together to, in a sense, agree to disagree. I don't have to agree with what you're doing to respect your right to do it. And that value is so fundamental to our notion of freedom that 61 years ago, the citizens, taxpayers, and voters cemented it into the Kansas Constitution. Despite how it may seem, this isn't a bill about plastic. It isn't even a bill about the environment, although it could have a great effect. This is a home rule bill. This bill adds nothing to any substantive policy aim. Instead, it serves only to reduce the ability of local decisions to be made locally and encroaches on the fundamental notion of freedom as adopted by Kansas voters who have demonstrated a clear preference for local control. We have some amazing cities here in Kansas full of incredible people doing the work of the public good. Our cities are innovative, each in their own way, and each have an identity as unique as their residents. Some cities want to be plastic free and some couldn't care less. That's okay. That's local control and that's a good thing. We also have some amazing businesses here in Kansas, owned, operated, and staffed by our local neighbors, family, and friends. Excuse me, sorry. Surely there are many examples of public-private partnerships that you can think of that are making our communities a better place. We need to allow local businesses and communities the opportunity to work together to preserve their own unique identities and give them a chance to innovate, to reach a solution that regulates single-use plastic containers in a way that preserves the interests of everyone at the table, or to not regulate them at all if they want. That's okay. That's local control, and it's a good thing. I have a bit of a personal example of how local control works. I served a very short term as a city commissioner in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and I was not reelected because I supported a very unpopular policy at the time. I stand by my thoughts, but people in Pittsburgh didn't like it. That's local control. It happens. And I mean, I'm here to tell you that if citizens of a city don't want plastic containers regulated, you better believe they won't stand by and let it happen. If a city were to push through this type of ordinance without thoroughly vetting it through the population, the next election would see the governing body members who supported it ousted. I know it happens to me. That's local control. It's a good thing. I urge you to allow democracy a chance to work and vote no on this bill. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm showing one more opponent on our agenda, Tad Kermar. Tad, are you here? Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and honorable members of the committee. I am Tad Kermar, a retired business and regulatory law attorney living in Big Springs, Kansas. Few people may have realized the dangerously broad sweep of this bill. It seeks to prohibit cities and counties from exercising home rule under the Kansas Constitution to regulate in any way, any kind of container or bag made of virtually any type of material used by virtually any type of business for practically any purpose. This alarmingly broad prohibition clearly violates the Kansas Constitution. Article 12, Section 5B states, cities are hereby empowered to determine their local affairs. Section 5D continues, Powers and authority granted to cities pursuant to this section shall be liberally construed for the purpose of giving to cities the largest measure of self-government. Consequently, only a serious and compelling state public policy concern could possibly justify taking away a municipality's constitutional home rule authority in a particular case. This bill would seriously impede the ability of local elected officials to make decisions they deem best for the communities they serve. As elected officials serving at the level closest to the people, local officials generally have the best knowledge of the needs of their communities. The state should not obstruct or interfere with their ability to meet those needs. The state legislature doesn't like mandates and restrictions from the federal government. The state should not do the same to local government leaders. Containers impose costs on cities and counties associated with litter cleanup, landfill space and maintenance, cleaning clogged sewers, and recycling. Each city and county should be able to determine the best ways to address these costs consistent with the wishes of its citizens. It has been suggested that different rules by different cities exercising their constitutional home rule authority could be inconvenient for national or regional chain stores operating in multiple cities. However, the constitutional purpose of giving to cities the largest measure of self-government empowers cities whether or not they have chain stores. A slight increase in administrative burden to chain stores is hardly a compelling state policy concern to justify taking away cities' constitutional home rule authority. Please oppose SB 493. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, committee, that's all I show for opponents. So we'll open it up for questions now. Questions for opponents. Representative Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does somebody have an answer? How long does a plastic bag take to biodegrade, roughly?
Plastic bag, did you ask? Yeah, 450 years to 1,000 years is what I've got in the literature.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you can just stay right there. So you talked about a sin tax, and you just said that it takes over 400 years. But I am looking at an article from Columbia Climate School, and it references at least 4 studies from the UK, a Scottish study, and others, as well as theirs. And it said that, and it makes sense because a plastic bag is so cheap, so it's based on the amount of energy. If you compare a cotton bag with a plastic bag, a one-time use or use it at your home use, that by far it says that the cotton bag is the worst in terms of environmental impacts. It requires more water, more kilowatts, it produces more sulfur dioxide that can cause acid rain, and just the list goes on, and can hold, most of those cotton bags contain E. coli, which are dangerous health hazards to humans, and that you would need to use it, according to this, the Columbia Climate School, over 7,000 times to get the same environmental impact as a plastic bag. So not here to debate the issues, because you seem to cite some other studies, but my question to you is the syntax. Is your main concern ocean impact? And if that is the main concern, then are Kansas plastic bags traveling all the way to the ocean? Thank you.
Good points, and I appreciate it. I'd be happy to take a look at some of those studies you referenced, Representative. A few things come to mind. Certainly, it's for us, our environmental impacts of plastic pollution, single-use plastics, aren't necessarily ocean-centered, right? We see these things in our parks, on our roadsides, our drainage ditches, in our yards, etc. So I would say that that's the primary concern, and those are associated with costs. I think the other concern is that other materials have a longer lifespan. They may have a bigger environmental footprint to create, but we'd argue that there's a longer lifespan there. And for example, it was said that, plastic bags are only a minuscule part of our landfill, but that's right, by volume, or excuse me, by weight of our landfills. If you think about recyclability, 69% of our plastic containers get landfilled, okay? That's pretty significant. 13% gets recycled. Besides food, plastic packaging is our second landfilled item, okay? I think that's pretty significant. I'd also say that, on the contrary, 80% of paper products are recycled. And I think 15.5% are landfill. Again, this is Environmental Protection Agency data from their landfill study 2018. And so I think it goes more than that. And so I hope that answers some of your concern. Of course, there's drawbacks to any type of generated item, but we'd say that certainly plastic is having a profound effect on ecosystems and our communities.
And I would love to send you the article from Columbia Climate School.
Thank you.
Committee, you have the questions?
No.
Seeing none. Oh, Representative Curtis.
Sorry, slipping in there at the last minute, but I appreciate the arguments made on home rule, because I too am a big proponent for home rule. We put that in our Constitution, and then we continue to walk all over it every year. I don't know why we don't allow our cities to be laboratories of experiment and try things. If they work, then they could be applicable statewide. And if we're afraid of a patchwork approach, then let's go the other way. Let's make a statewide policy the other direction.
I think that's a very fair point, Representative, and that's what we're asking for is if you want statewide uniformity, let's have a little balance to address the litter problem at hand. The other thing I'll say for the committee's benefit, I encourage you to read not just my testimony, but all the testimony from the private citizens. I think 17 private citizens took the time and effort to write to you for this hearing today. These local initiatives are backed by popular demand. Right, a study done by the KU School of Medicine there in Wichita found that 2/3 or closer to 70% of Wichita supported limits on plastic bags in their community. Nationwide, Oceana did a survey that 8 in 10 Americans support doing something about our plastic problem through state or local policies. You understand that there are a number of states that do have a preemption bill like Senate Bill 493, but there's more states that do not. And including the latest state that surrounds us, Colorado, got rid of their preemption law to phase out single-use plastics in the next few years, okay? So our Western Kansas folks should appreciate that because they don't want plastic bags and other type of containers, blowing across their border like plastic tumbleweeds. Okay, so thank you for your comments and questions.
Other questions? Representative Probst.
Don't sit down, Zach. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I remember this debate from before, and I think for this discussion, it's worth bringing up again. We talk about the market side of this, and we talk about the inconvenience for business, but can you speak a little bit to the public cost of some of the waste? I mean, if I remember the discussion from several years ago, some of this is jamming up stormwater drains and things like that. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Sure, and Tad Kramar, previous conferee, alluded a little bit to some of the costs. These plastic bags and other plastic materials jam up the recycling machinery and equipment. You have opposition testimony from the Kansas Organization of Recyclers. I think that speaks volumes. We're talking about cleanup costs from not just from municipal staff, cleaning up the community, in which a large of these products are the waste that they're cleaning up. We heard a little bit about litter study. If you take a look of testimony, I have that 50% of the litter bigger than 4 inches found in a survey at Wichita State University conducted was plastic or foam. and 75% of that plastic or foam came from the food and beverage industry. Okay, so these are the products that are ending up in our parks, in our roadways, et cetera, and that's a cost to clean them up, as we should keep Kansas clean. It's a cost for landfill space. I also say you might find this kind of interesting coming from an environmental lobbyist, but I think it's a misuse of a precious oil resource. Right, we're taking this oil resource and we're creating a single-use product that doesn't last long. When we could be coming up with other strategies that don't create a litter problem and could reduce costs for our communities. So, those are just a few things that provide a cost to taxpayers. It would be good if those producing these products out into our ecosystems, out into our communities that cause an eyesore, but also a taxpayer problem, if they took responsibility for these issues. And I know they'll say that a lot of the products are recyclable, but practically they don't get recycled. They get landfilled, and that precious landfill space is a cost to taxpayers as well. Thank you.
Okay, committee, seeing no more questions for opponents, I'm going to conclude the opponent testimony at this time. We may have skipped over any neutral testimony. Is anybody here wanting to testify in a neutral position today? Seeing none, I will close the hearing on SB 493. Committee, I want to remind you that tomorrow's meeting has been canceled and tomorrow's meeting will be held Monday. And so we're adjourned. Have a good weekend. Thank you.